Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third in a series of Faculty Teams Live events that the Provost Office is hosting. And as you know, today we're going to focus on classroom technology, and I'm going to share a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. But before I do that, I invited President Garamella to join us for the first few minutes because there's some exciting things that have happened this week, and I thought it would be great for all of us to hear from him. And I just tell you a little bit about who's here today and what our focus is going to be. And so we're very happy to have Simeon Ananu, who's our Chief Information Officer and our expert guru in technology, assisted by the wonderful Julia Russell, who serves as his associate. Of course, our registrar and senior assistant registrar, both Veronica Carter and Naima Dennis, who are here. Of course, Gary Durr, who is our VP for Operations and Safety and is really chairing our UVM Strong group and answers all questions of return to fall and now our contingency plan if something would change mid-semester. And then my two associate provosts, Jay Dickinson, who's the associate provost for academic affairs, and Jim Vigorel, the associate provost for faculty affairs. And then Wendy Varen Beck, we're happy to have her here. She's the assistant director of CTL, and this fits nicely with our technology discussion because Wendy helps us with the pedagogy and how we can use technology in ways that will really meet our pedagogy. And I believe that Simeon's going to speak to some classroom technologies, supported technologies, and classroom producers, some unique things that they have created to help really support faculty success in the classroom. So I'm very excited about that. Today we are curating questions. Carrie Castano has agreed to do that. Just so you know, when your questions come in, we see every question. Some questions are repeated, so we'll just pick one of those and cluster them and publish them. So you may not see your question in the queue, but it doesn't mean that we haven't gotten it. We absolutely have, but there might be 7 other questions that have asked the same thing. We're going to focus the questions on today's theme because we usually get hundreds of questions. We want to make sure that we can answer as many as possible. And whatever we don't get through, as you know, we post online. So we just finished our FAQs from last week where there were a significant number of questions, and those are posted online, and we will put those in the link when we open up the question and answer box. So thank you for your patience as we're trying to do that. And then next week, our theme is going to be research and graduate education. And so our VP for research, Kurt Dombrowski, and Cindy Forhan, our Dean for the Graduate College, will be here, as well as other members of the UVM Research and Graduate Education Working Group. Okay, so before we get started, I'm hoping that Suresh has been able to get online. Do we know if he is, Suresh, are you able to connect? Well, I think
we're trying to get the right link to him, and I'm working on that. So I will let you know once he's on.
Perfect. All right, thanks for your flexibility. I've learned in my research and work with kids with autism that flexibility has to be your middle name, and all things do not go exactly the way they want, although Simeon assures me that it's all going to run just perfectly, right, Simeon, in the fall? So with that, no pressure, Simeon. Why don't you just give an overview to the faculty, and then I'm sure they have lots of questions for you.
Thank you, Patty. And good afternoon, everyone. I will provide a quick overview to create a context, mostly around the institutional commitment that has been made to equip a maximum number of classrooms with enhanced technologies. And when I say classrooms, I'm referring to both our GP and non-GP spaces alike, so that they all have the adequate technologies to allow the faculty to be able to webcast their lectures. I think that's a very important point because given all the planning that we are making around fall, that capability will be very useful both for the faculty and for the students. So all the classrooms that we're thinking about, again, the maximum number of classrooms, they will each have a computer, of course, a webcam with an integrated microphone in the webcam, and speakers so that the faculty can hear students who may be at a remote site, and students can also hear the faculty. The classrooms will also have the capability to allow for synchronous as well as asynchronous teaching. So a person can show up and teach live or can be in the space to pre-record their lecture. Now, of course, our teaching spaces have various sizes, or they vary in sizes. So the size of a particular room, along with this social distancing guidelines, will determine whether a space can accommodate a live audience, whether you can have some students in a room while the faculty is teaching, or if the room can only accommodate a remote audience, or if the room can accommodate a combination of the two. But the technology is going to be almost similar in all the spaces. But the size and social distancing guidelines will determine how the space is utilized. I will also, if I may, take just a brief moment to highlight some workarounds when we think about the faculty in the teaching space, especially in light with everything that is going on. So normally, most faculty may want to use the whiteboard as a writing surface. But instead of using that whiteboard now in front of the classroom, we are configuring the existing document camera that may be in most of our rooms, and to turn those document cameras into a writing surface so that the faculty can project their handwritten notes to students who might be at a remote site, or even those who are in a room. We have also worked with the Office of Disability Services to identify a certain ink pen that will be provided to all faculty for their individual use in the classrooms. So, but let's remember though that the scenario that I just described here, this method of using the document camera to project handwritten notes will still require the use of paper on which the actual handwritten notes should occur. But we also have some, so aside from those rooms that have a document camera, there are also rooms that are not equipped with a document camera at this point. And those particular spaces, we intend to outfit them with a digital writing surface, almost like a small tablet of some sort. And so that the faculty can still handwrite on that digital surface. And there is an appropriate stylus that will also be made available to each individual faculty to be able to use and write. And whatever is written on that digital surface will be projected, or whatever is drawn on that surface is projected to students, either in a live audience or in a remote audience. So in a nutshell, what I've described so far may seem simple, but we also realize that some of these new technologies will likely require some assistance or may introduce some of the complexities. So we plan on augmenting the capacity of our technology support itself to assist the faculty and the students in the act of teaching and learning. And that particular population, if I may, I'll emphasize this. Teaching and learning in the fall, given the complex technological needs that will surround those activities, those who are heavily involved or actively involved in teaching and learning in the fall, we expect to provide to them an expedited service. So I chose those words very carefully. I call it the expedited service because there are many priorities, but I think we also need to look at our resources in ways that, or even prioritize our resources in ways that will allow us to respond to the needs of faculty and students who are in the active teaching and learning. So they will be the highest priority as we look at our resources. So that's on the technology support side. We're likely to have an augmented pool of student workers or individuals who can be deployed or dispatched very quickly, either roaming around a particular building or a cluster of rooms where the person can step in very quickly, so that the faculty that's not on the student and the students do not have a prolonged downtime if the technology was not to work as planned in a few instances. We are also working in collaboration with academic affairs, because we understand that this increased technology in teaching is likely to introduce various hurdles. So in collaboration with the academic affairs team, we are also exploring extensively new ways in which we can provide additional help to the faculty, not so much on the technology itself, but more on the classroom management in what I call a heavily technological enhanced classroom environment. Some faculty have spoken to us about potentially having a need for prep, or having a need for someone who can monitor the chats while they're teaching, or even someone who has knowledge of the content to a certain degree to assist with responding. So we are exploring the mechanism itself around how that service will look like and how it can be provided. And those are the individuals, or that role itself in a nutshell is what we're referring to as classroom producers, because they will be there to support the pedagogical needs of the faculty. So at this point, what I would like to do is to pause briefly as the president has just joined us, to allow the president to make his remarks.
Thanks so much, Simeon. Sorry, Suresh, that you had the wrong link to get in, but I know people are anxious to hear from you and to hear some of the exciting things that have happened this week. So Suresh, go ahead.
Well, folks, thank you, and I apologize for the little kerfuffle there. I guess we've all been facing these things while we teach our classes, and so you see me now having the same issue. So I'm very pleased to be on. Again, apologies for the delay. So I know the focus of today's discussion is technology in the classroom. It's certainly an important topic in even normal times, as we've just demonstrated. I promise it wasn't it wasn't to prove the point, but I think it's especially so during the current pandemic. I've asked Simeon, who was just speaking, of course, our CIO, to be sure that all classrooms are outfitted in a way that will facilitate the various means of course delivery that you all will be employing. I know we've got an alphabet soup of course types and things like that. It's not going to be trivial, it takes a lot of effort, but at least on the IT side, we are going to do all our best to equip classrooms, etc. And that's the topic of the discussion today. But I was very pleased to hear that there'd be a couple of minutes where I could speak, so that I could maybe celebrate a couple of non-COVID related milestones this past week. It's easy sometimes in our frantic effort to prepare for a safe fall start to lose sight of other good news. So the one thing is that you may have heard that our legislature agreed to fund the university's proposal to stand up an Office of Engagement that will help us meet UVM's land grant mission. You've certainly heard me talking about it ever since I arrived, especially as our state looks to emerge from the challenges posed by COVID. The office will strive to be the partner of choice for connecting knowledge, skills, and research that foster the health and vibrancy and the economic well-being of the state, essentially connecting all that you do to help the state. Extension will be an important collaborator in this effort, but the effort extends across the entire university. The office will serve as a front door to the university. We'll be doing a press release about this tomorrow, but I want to share some information this afternoon with you as a heads up. So please look out for that information. My first role in academic administration was actually to lead such an office. And so I'm very optimistic about what we can do together in service to the state and its people. Of course, the second piece of news, which the board voted to unanimously to divest from investments in fossil fuels. The decision means that UVM will now end new direct investment in fossil fuels immediately and will fully divest from public investments in fossil fuels by July 2023. This is, as far as I can tell, the most aggressive timeline of any university that's announced such actions. I want to share also that the trustees appreciated that sustainability is an important part of the university's educational programs and the research output, and that divestment was a noticeable piece that was missing. The board's action helps to advance the university's reputation in the sustainability space, and I'm very pleased that we could get to this juncture and truly believe that this is a historic, or should I say a watershed moment in the life of our university. I know that word is sometimes overused, but I think it is appropriate here. I hope you share my excitement and that you will now be able to even more enthusiastically spread the message of UVM's core commitment to sustainability in all we do. Finally, before I turn this back to Patty, please accept my thanks again for putting students first. Our most important mission is providing an excellent educational experience for our students. Without that, there's no UVM. Thank you for stepping up during these unusual and uniquely challenging times. There may not be many people physically on campus, but all across our university, our employees are in overdrive, preparing for a safe fall start in the midst of a constantly changing landscape. And I know the situation also presents special and unanticipated challenges for you, our faculty, but together, I hope we will ensure that UVM continues to serve our students and deliver on our promise to provide them an excellent education. So thank you sincerely from me. Patty, back to you.
Thanks so much, Suresh, for taking time out of your busy schedule and for sharing the exciting news about sustainability, your leadership in that effort, as well as our board's leadership, and your excitement and innovation around the Office of Engagement, which is also wonderful to hear, especially in these times when we're dealing with so many other pieces. So you're always getting us to think about moving forward, and I think those two elements are a key piece of that. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your appreciation of the faculty. All right, Simeon, sorry that we interrupted you, but you were gracious and we knew this was going to happen, and you experience technology challenges all the time, and you're working hard to make sure faculty have as few of those challenges as possible. So I want to give it back to you. Is there any last words that you wanted to share before we open it up for the Q&A?
Yes, just briefly, as we think about the various populations, especially some of our new faculty who will be joining UVM this fall, and the potential technological glitches that they may also experience, we are now taking steps to allow that population of colleagues to gain access to our systems much sooner so that they can start familiarizing themselves with the environment in which they'll be teaching. Similarly, we are also taking steps to allow our admitted students to gain access to our systems much sooner this summer so that, again, they too become familiar with the Teams, Blackboard, and other tools. I think it's important for me to just pause and also to thank the small group of 10 faculty who have volunteered to help us test and simulate some of the technologies that we are putting in the classrooms. And these colleagues are testing or simulating three precise things. One, they're testing the usefulness of the technologies that I've spoken about briefly. But second, they're also simulating and testing the integration of these technologies in their teaching. And finally, they're trying to help us simulate the type of support that will be needed so that we can adjust and calibrate our efforts accordingly. I would like to mention one more thing very quickly, which is a question that we've gotten from some concerned students and parents alike, who are not just asking a question, but also, I think, subtly making a request of us, making sure that there is not an expectation on the part of students to take courses in multiple platforms across the university. And that question came up on a number of occasions, and we have reassured parents and students that the university does have an environment within which students will learn. So Blackboard being our institutionally supported learning management system, and Teams being our institutionally supported collaboration tool. But precisely, we know that there were questions and concerns from some members of our community around Teams, and I would like to assure you that UVM has an ETS. We have been working with Microsoft, and they have assigned one of their executive team members to UVM particularly. We don't want to take credit for all the improvements that have been made around Teams at this point, but we have been assured so far that the number of images or faces that you can see on the screen will increase from 9 to 49 by the end of the month. That's a huge improvement that I believe is important. And finally, I also mentioned the breakout rooms that is also needed by a number of faculty members. We will also be, there is a workaround that we have, and we'll be publishing instructions around that. And we are finally working on an integration that will match a faculty member, their students, and a course, and automatically creating a session, a team session for all courses that will be taking place so that the faculty will not have to do that individually. So those are, in a nutshell, the things that we're doing. And I think at this point, I'd be glad to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Simeon. And I think we are opening up for questions. Suresh, there might be a few questions related to your announcements. Can you stay for a few minutes and answer those, or are you quick to leave?
Yes, I'm happy to stay. Okay,
thank you. All right. The first question I think is actually going to be for you, Simeon. What's the timeline for bringing online infrastructure to allow teams to auto-populate with class roster information? Instructors will be hard pressed to keep class rosters up to date in Teams in the chaos of the start of the semester.
We hope to have this integration in place by early August.
Okay, I'm looking for next questions. Here they're coming. Julia, is there anything else that you wanted to add about technology, or, okay, here's some questions, or Wendy about the training to help support faculty? I know some of the things that they're asking are, does the support of classrooms extend beyond hardware to software? We have a pivotal room where Teams is not integrated into the classroom technology. Will your office support integrating existing tech with Teams? So I don't know if Simeon or Julia would like to answer that question.
I'm happy to go ahead. So we are working to try and integrate existing classroom technology into Teams. We're working with the general purpose classrooms and the non-general purpose classrooms, so that even a classroom or a space that is equipped with non-standard technology will be part of the collection of rooms that's available. So the answer yes is yes.
Thank you, Julia. I don't know if this might be for Veronica with Julia. For remote courses, how can instructors sign up for a room space to record or stream their classes?
Hi, this is Naima. I'm not sure if Veronica is on. She was not feeling well. At the moment, we are working on rescheduling fall for the main courses. And normally for one-off things like that, we would send people to University Event Services. We do have a collection of rooms that we are calling pods, which I think seat 9 or less. And I believe we might be reserving those for that specific use. I do not have a specific, I don't have a an answer 100% right now, but I will definitely take this on and pass it on to the powers that be.
Okay,
And
great.
I'll just add that the intention of those pod spaces is that they can be used in between class periods, but the process for reserving them is something we still need to address.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that question was asked. President Garamella, will UVM also provide its faculty with a fossil fuel retirement pension investment opportunity under its fiduciary responsibility?
I was hoping you wouldn't call me out on that, Patty. I have no clue. I guess really, I know there's a committee that looks at retirement, the funds that are available and so on. I know there was a huge study and the number of funds were chosen recently. So I'm afraid I'm not dodging the question. I have no clue. And, if somebody can answer it, we'll come back. This is obviously the decision that was made by the board was about the investments that the endowment makes. Now, you should also know from before that the cash that the university has is actually invested in entirely fossil-free investments anyway. So there was only one piece that the university has, which is in the endowment, that was not fossil-free entirely. And so this is a much bigger decision regarding what the investment subcommittee does. I think what we do with the options for individual retirement accounts will probably need to be addressed in a different place.
Yes, and we can do some more investigating on that. I'm sorry to call you out on that one, but okay, I have a good question from Don Stratton. In the past, when he's tried to do online course evaluations in the largest of the lecture halls, the servers have apparently gotten overloaded and the students were unable to complete the online forms. Will the classrooms be able to handle the load of so many students working online simultaneously? And I think this has come up before, Simeon, where people are concerned when we have this many people doing this many things and we have time tests and evaluations and you have to start over. So what are your thoughts? I know you've been working on this, but I would love to hear your perspective on this.
This is the first time that I'm hearing about the course evaluation timing out. So we will take this particular one and look further into it. But I'll give examples around some of our other larger systems, such as Blackboard. In the spring, when we were transitioning into remote instruction, we actually increased the capacity and the load of Blackboard several times to be able to handle everyone and all the transactions. So we know for sure that the Blackboard is capable of handling the load. And this is also another reason why we continue to talk about institutionally supported systems, so that when issues arise, we know how to investigate. So Blackboard being one. Now in this case, I'm hearing about the course evaluation, which I presume is Blue. We'll look into Blue to see if the load is properly sized for a large population all online. And we'll continue to look at our wireless capabilities in the buildings also to make sure that we don't have bottlenecks.
Sure. I think the next two questions are for you as well, although Julia might have some additional input. One is it possible for some of the tech-enhanced classrooms to be available in August for us to practice or be trained? And then could, Simeon, you clarify what it means to expedite online courses or online learning courses?
We are actually hoping to have the rooms available as early as possible so that the faculty can come and practice what it means to teach in the enhanced spaces. Yes, we are working through that, and we'll communicate a date as soon as we believe that the space is readily functional. So that's number one. In fact, that would be a commitment, and we will also need a commitment from the faculty to come in and to play with the equipment to make sure that they feel comfortable. On the second part of the question about expedited, there are many requests that come our way on a given day or in a given hour. And when I talk about expedited services, basically what I'm trying to say there is that when we end up with multiple requests in a moment, the ones that pertain to teaching and learning, active teaching and learning in that moment will rise up to the top.
Thank you. The next question is, will teams allow large classes to join all at the same time to support synchronous remote sessions? And how many people can reasonably be on at the same time in the same meeting?
Yes, teams can support the number of a large class. In fact, the number of people who can join a Teams meeting as a class has now moved from 250 to 300 and will soon move up to 500 in early August.
Excellent, that's good news to hear. Then there was also one from Madalena Furis who said, we have plans to include graduate students appointed as teaching assistants onto the classroom producers pool?
Yes, I say yes, but let me then add some caveat or nuances. The determination of, so we will need some qualifications for the classroom producers, and the faculty, we will invite the faculty to help identify those qualifications. So in some cases, it could very well be a TA or it could be an undergraduate student who is serving as the producer role.
I think the next question is an important one, and one that since I still teach, I always wonder that as well. What if a faculty is teaching remotely? Who will they call, or who can they text if there's an urgent tech problem while they're in the middle of teaching class? If, let's say, they don't have the classroom producers, we're hoping that most faculty will have classroom producers who can manage that, right, Simeon? But is there another step that you have developed to support faculty?
Yes, we are trying to channel most requests, technologically related requests, through the help desk. And this is the reason why we're going to have to augment the capacity of the help desk itself. So in the scenario of someone teaching remotely who may end up having problems, the best advice will be to contact the help desk so that we can dispatch their question or concerns to the right places on campus.
Excellent, thank you. And I think, Naima, this one is for you. When will we know our room assignments and if they are going to change?
It is highly likely that the room assignments will change. I can almost guarantee it. We have lost capacity in the majority of our rooms of almost 75% due to the 6-foot distancing, the social distancing that we have put in place. We are working on getting some last-minute changes to the schedule of courses right now to better be able to place some of the courses. We hope to be able to run the scheduler this afternoon and make final tweaks tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you so much. You mentioned, Simeon, that non-GP classes will also be set up with technology. Does this include non-traditional teaching spaces such as labs and studios?
The direct answer is no. Those were not factored into the GP spaces that we've counted. Am I correct there, Julia?
The answer, I guess, I would say is yes and no. So many of the labs and the non-traditional spaces are part of the non-GP pool. And so we've partnered with the distributed IT folks to tell us whether those non-traditional spaces needed technology. If they put it on the list, then we're addressing it.
Thank you, Julia. I was hoping you were going to say that. This is a really good question. Is there a recommended personal microphone type or model for projecting well to in-class students while wearing a mask that will be compatible with the webcam system? And I don't know if Julia or Simeon want to answer that.
Well,
it's kind of hard to, we're trying to stay away from the models and such, which is why we're going with integrated microphones in the camera so that we don't have to have each person having to plug in and unplug devices, which creates one more touch point and then potential configuration of the devices. And again, there's a myriad of microphones out there. So I think it would be misleading if I start giving out specific model numbers at this point.
And I think I might add as well that we are giving audio really high priority in our testing because we really believe that that's really a make or break technology. And so when we're in the room and we're doing our testing with these integrated microphones, if a microphone hasn't worked well for the people we've had remote as well as for the people in the classroom, then we've taken it off our list.
Thank you, Julia. And I know having that small faculty group that Jay Dickinson and you have worked together is really helpful because it's faculty who are saying, this is not going to work for me, or this will work, because they really are kind of the boots on the ground people. This summer, one of the faculty mentioned that they had the opportunity to use the program Yellow Dig, and I think Jim might have mentioned this at one of our previous events. It's a more dynamic and collaborative platform for student dialogue and engagement online, and I believe continuing and distance education hold a license, but there's currently not a license to all of UVM. Is that true? And is it possible to purchase this license for use among all faculty this fall?
I'll be glad to explore that further to understand the use and the magnitude of the demand itself to see how we may be able to orchestrate a license for the university.
So Patty, I don't know if Wendy can answer that. My understanding is that Yellow Dig has extended a free license through the fall semester, but faculty using that should recognize that given the pricing strategy that vendor has employed, we may not be able to continue that commitment through the spring. So, you know, use it in the fall, but we may or may not, the pricing is extremely steep. We may or may not be able to continue that in the spring.
Okay.
Wendy,
Yes,
can you confirm that?
yes, that is true, that it is available for quote unquote free until the end of December.
Okay, great. Well, so I see two pieces. It's free access to faculty through the end of December, and Simeon, you'll follow up to look at what makes sense and how we might be able to collaborate with our CDE partners. Okay, another good question. Since many of us will be broadcasting from home or our offices, are there any tools that could be attached to our existing computers that do not have touch screen capabilities that would allow us for a more whiteboard experience? Julia?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing with our technology testing is we've broken it into phases. And so the first phase has really been heads down with the classrooms. The second phase is addressing this exact question. So people are not coming onto campus, won't have access to the pods, which was a space that could have been available to them. What kind of technology do they need? Webcams, microphones, whiteboards, that's the next phase of investigation. And so our expectation is that when we get through that phase, we'll have a list of recommendations that we can make.
Excellent, Julia, thank you. Some really great questions coming through. Okay, here's another one. In the spring semester and again this summer, I've experienced challenges with Microsoft Teams when including invited speakers into an online lecture or discussion class. This included UVM affiliates from the hospital who had challenges entering Teams following my invitations to scheduled meetings. This Zoom platform does not seem to suffer from these same connectivity issues for invited guest speakers. People are just wondering, have others had this issue, and is there anything we can do to resolve that since Teams is the platform that UVM has selected? Simeon, go ahead.
Yes, the particular scenario that you described there, especially when it involves some of our colleagues, either in LCOM or at the hospital, individuals who may have 2 different IDs. Occasionally, there are complications because the individual may not know which credentials they're using. Again, I don't have all the full detail of the scenario, but we saw exactly what happened with the president here briefly earlier. Those things happen regardless of the platform. So I don't want to use that particular case as something that makes or break the use of Teams at all. But those are also scenarios that we want people to refer back to us so we can investigate them further, so that we don't have repeated issues in the future.
Your point's well taken. I've actually had that happen in Zoom to me twice. So I think it's, as we're all using different technologies, these things happen. Okay, the next question is when will we have specific information about the classroom streaming technologies capabilities, and will instructor, PowerPoint, students in the room, and students at home be visible? Maybe Julia, you can answer that question.
Yes. So we're working to have a tool available within the next couple of weeks so that when you know which room you're assigned to, you can go to this tool and it will explain what technology is there, a little bit about how to use it, and have links out to documentation and support. To the question about whether you can see PowerPoints, in-class students and remote students simultaneously, students who are physically present in the classroom will not show up in the Teams live stream. The cameras in the room all face forward towards the instructor. You can hear their voices if they ask a question, but you can't see their faces. So that is one difference that you might, I guess, want to think about as you think about crafting the course for the fall.
Excellent. And Wendy, I'm just wondering, what does your team see as strategies for supporting pedagogy through this new technology? I know you have lots of events scheduled. Should they just go to your website? Any things that you can tell people that are coming up?
Sure. We do have some events in late July and early August scheduled that are specifically focused on these teaching modalities. In the interim, we have just sort of these one-off technology workshops, but starting at the end of July, we're really prepared to help faculty think through their course design for modalities that they have been assigned to. And our hope is that after participating in these events that folks will have a better understanding of what they need to learn in order to be prepared to teach in the modalities they've been assigned, and so that they'll be better equipped to choose other professional development offerings we have later in August. And all of our events right now are listed on our website, which is www.uvm.edu/ctl/events.
And Wendy, that relates to a later question that came up in that people are feeling a bit overwhelmed the first week back, and so having those scheduled at the end of July and beginning of August will be welcomed for faculty as they have all kinds of retreats and other meetings the first week of classes or the week before classes.
Yes, and of course we're happy to talk to anyone who wants to have like an individual consult. You can just email us at ctl@uvm.edu.
And they can do that starting now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's a question about Teams again. Can we ask Teams to make it so that we can see at least 10 people on the screen? I know right now, isn't it up to, is it 9 or 12?
It is 9 right now and is expected to move up to 49, hopefully by the end of the month.
Okay. I think the point is that this will just help with remote teaching, whether seminars mixed or whatever. And the other question is there a way to rotate who is seen on the screen, or how does that happen? Let's say you have 30 students in the class and they're going to move it up to 10 or 12. How do we get to see everybody? Is there a way to rotate that?
Yes, you normally see, so even in regular meetings right now, if you have 25 individuals, you only see the faces of the most active 9 individuals. If you have, so if you were to have 29 people in a meeting, the most 9 will always be visible, and the most passive 20 will be invisible to you.
Thank you. That kind of gives you a sense of who's engaged and who's not, and who you might want to call on to get them engaged in the conversation. Another interesting question, will all students have the ability to log into the faculty's live stream via Teams for each class lecture? This faculty member says they're going to have a combination of mixed in-class for some lectures and remote learners, and can the lectures be recorded? My understanding is all lectures can be recorded. Is that accurate? And then how about the question of the live streaming? I don't know if Julia or Simeon want to answer that one.
Yes, similar to Blackboard, how we have a Blackboard shell created for all courses, we are actively working on having a Teams session created for all courses that will match the faculty, the course, and the students. And that session and a link will be created and made available. But the faculty member will then have the ability to turn it on and to make the link available to their students. So we would like to automate that process so that the faculty members don't have to do that daily.
That would be great. Julia, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add, if I'm reading the question correctly, there's some interest perhaps in having people logged into Teams while they're in the classroom at the same time that people who are remote are logged in. And we were doing some testing with that today, and it is possible.
Yeah, so thank you for picking that piece up. I think that's exactly what they were asking. So this is why it's so great that you're having those faculty groups kind of test out things. Okay, Libby Miles asked a question. She appreciated your setup description for lecture-based classes with remote students, Simeon, and wondered, will there also be rooms designed to facilitate active class discussions, engaging both students who are in the class as well as those who elect the at-home option, perhaps with multiple projectors that show remote students' materials and dock camera notes at the same time?
So the direct answer is those complex setups are not necessarily factored into everything that we're doing right now. One, there is the scenario as described has a lot of technological complexities built in, but then you have to think about social distancing and probably more work for the faculty to make all those things work, trying to mix and match what's happening remotely and what is happening in the space.
Yeah, I think this is an important question because our students who choose the at-home option, we want to make sure that they get an engaged experience, and I know our faculty are really committed to that. So any way we can support them to do that, especially as some faculty have already said, they might have 4 different instructional modes that they're trying to manage. So again, Wendy, I know this puts a lot of work on CTL, but helping faculty navigate through those and making sure they have the technology will be critical.
Patty, if I may, though, maybe I should also clarify my answer. There is a workaround, I would call it a slightly different way of doing breakout sessions. Maybe that's what the question is about. Yes, there is a slightly different way of doing breakout sessions in Teams, and we're putting together what the instructions will look like. So that may very well be a method that a faculty member can employ to allow students who may be in the space and those who are at a remote location to collaborate and to be able to do work groups.
Excellent, thank you. Gary, you thought you were going to escape, but I think this next one might be for you. It says, for students taking a mix of remote and in-person courses during a single day, where will they take remote courses while on campus, particularly students who live off campus? And I'm only calling Gary out because we've actually had this conversation because Jay also raised it with us, and I believe there is a plan to figure out locations that we can provide so students who just can't go home will have a place to do remote instruction. Gary, did I answer that right, or is there anything you wanted to add?
No, you answered that correctly. And some of the challenges we faced as we've been preparing for fall is the campus has a lot of good space on campus. What it does not have is a lot of big space that we can use for multiple purposes. So one of the strategies we're looking at will be to have several large tents on campus. There'll be heated electricity. I'm working with Simeon and his crew to outfit it with technology so that those could be just drop-by spaces that people can use. They'll probably be on the green between Fleming and Central Campus Residence Hall, between Howell Library and the Davis Center, and then one down on Redstone campus. But just spaces that we can use for those type of purposes, because we lose so much in so many of the spaces just because we bring it down because of the size.
Thank you, Gary. I know this next one is a concern that probably lots of people share. This spring, when we had to do our pivot, there were times when Teams became very slow and the chat wouldn't load during class. I know I've even had that, and I had to go offline and then start again, and then the chat would come back, and that worked fine. But some people then switched to Zoom because they thought that would be easier. I think the question here, Simeon, and I know you've been in contact with Teams, and they're actually assigning someone to our university to make sure that those features that were problematic that we discovered in the spring will be taken care of in the fall. Anything you want to add to that?
Yes, load was, or the immediate increased load in the spring was a problem at times. Because we did not necessarily have 13 or 20,000 people all on Teams at once. But those most of those issues have been remedied over the past few months. And also the security of the sessions have been strengthened over the past few months. So those are concerns that I think were valid back then, but I think they've also been addressed, which now allows us to be able to have many meetings without experiencing the delays that we may have seen earlier in the session.
We're coming towards the end, but there are just a few more questions if we can try and address them. The next two questions are related to the student producers. Will they be paid? Yes, they will. How much, I'm not quite sure if that has been worked out, and how is it decided who's hired for the combo of tech savvy? Is there certain content knowledge that they're going to need? I'm assuming we would have them be able to do tech checks and help monitor chats and troubleshooting, but who else would like to talk about what our producers, classroom producers? I don't know if Jay or Julia have additional information to give faculty.
So I can give a tentative answer to that. I think we're seeing this as a couple of different functions. I want to emphasize that CTL will be offering training. So Madalena had asked the question previously about whether GTAs might serve that function. If you want your undergraduate or graduate TA to serve a producer role, as well as having, balancing that out with other work that you would like them to do within the purview of their position, they can get trained by CTL and ETS to serve in those capacities. But there's the producer role is really not meant to be a classroom content expert. There's someone who will be hired and trained to have the technology background to solve problems and to ensure that the setup that the faculty member would like to be able to execute can be executed during the class period. Monitor, make sure that student hands are acknowledged by the faculty member and so forth.
Okay, and I see another question related to that from Rocky DeWitt. If you already have a TA, can they be trained as a tech producer? So those are some of the questions that are coming up. All right, we have one more minute. There is a request, if Simeon, that you can give us the link that illustrates the digital tablets that you mentioned. That would be great. And I think one of the big concerns faculty have is, what if a faculty member is doing remote and they're living in more remote rural communities? Are there suggestions, same for students, to strengthening bandwidth so that they might have easier access. And Simeon, maybe that'll be our last question. I don't know if you have any suggestions on how people can do that.
Yes, so earlier in the pandemic, many of the internet service providers opened up their networks to provide free Wi-Fi in many communities as part of a national response approach. I have yet to check if that is still in effect and can be utilized in the fall when people might need them. So that would be one approach for people to take advantage of expanded Wi-Fi capability that was created, if that is still available. Another option could be some sort of MiFi or portable mobile antennas that can be added to a computer to gain internet access in remote areas. And unfortunately, we are in Vermont, where when you don't have a very good cell coverage, then even those MiFi devices do not always work well. So I'm afraid, as optimistic as I want to be around this one, I think the limitations are basically revolve around what may exist in a particular area. Some libraries will sometimes open their doors, but again, those are touch points that people are trying to avoid and reduce. So yeah, that's a difficult one.
Thank you, Simeon. We will continue to, I know we had that question and we tried to increase bandwidth for students and we had to do the pivot. We are at time and I want to honor people's time. We didn't get through all the questions, but as I mentioned, we always take all of these questions, list them, and then put them in our FAQs, and then we load them up. So thank you for the excellent questions. We'll probably be circling back with Simeon, Wendy, and Julia to help us answer some of these last questions that we haven't been able to get to. I think some are fairly easy to answer, and others will cause us to think about other things we should be doing to support your success in the classroom. So thank you for your excellent questions. Clearly, people have been thinking a lot about technology and how to really make this a really engaged experience for our students, whether you're going to be talking remote or teaching remotely, in person, mixed, or online. Just a reminder, next week we'll see you again at noon, and our focus is going to be research and graduate education. So get your questions ready for that. Both Kirk and Cindy Forehand will be here, as well as other faculty members and staff members in that group. I want to thank our presenters today for participating and for all the wonderful questions. And again, look for our links, and any links that people have asked for, we'll make sure we put those in our FAQs that we post. So thank you, and thanks, Carrie, for curating the questions. And everybody, enjoy the summer, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.